Okay, so basically we're going to be going through this CSET biology paper. So basically this is the January 2017 paper, and we're just going to be going through it very quickly. So it's not going to be like, oh, detailed explanations, right? This video is mainly focusing on the correct answer, because you know that when you're doing these past papers you have to pay attention to the answers, right? So when you're watching these past paper videos, whether on this channel or watching on any other channel, you have to be noting the answers that they pick, not just the letters but the actual answers, and you basically store it in your memory, right? Obviously, you should also study along with it, ensure that you know the content and stuff before going into this, right? But past papers definitely do help, so I hope that they do help you. Let me just press this thing because we just realized that, oh, this was muted. But anyways, let us just begin. So the very first thing that we're gonna do is, or the very first advice I'd give you is to read instructions on here. So it said this test consists of 60 questions and but in this video I think we're going to do up to like maybe 41. I think that's what we're doing, up until 41 questions. But basically you're going to I think this year they're doing it online, right? So obviously it won't be shaded, or at least some exams will be online, right? And then maybe few shaded. But so anyways, it's the same thing. Ensure that you pick the correct answer, and anyways, let us just get into it. Alright, so before we get started, just go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe, and let's get into it. So, when you're doing this, ensure that you read the questions carefully and don't rush it. Just read it carefully, right? To it through its entirety. So, read the question and read it each option and then pick the answer. So, number one, let's start with number one. So, number one says, which of the following features is used to classify a group of organisms as class insecta? Right? So A says size, B says shape, C says color, and then D says number of segments, right? So D is the correct answer, number of segments. So number two says commensalism is illustrated by the relationship between A, dog and a flea, B, hen and a chick, C, cow and an egret, and then D, human and a mosquito, right? And the correct answer is C. But it's a quick thing to note that in order to answer this particular question, which is number two, you'd have to know what commensalism is, and it's basically a symbiotic relationship, right? In which one organism benefits and then the other doesn't benefit, but at the same time the other organism is not harmed, right? So that is why the cow and the egret would be a perfect example. So one is benefiting by getting food, and then the other one is not really harmed in the process. Like they don't really care. The cow not care what the egret want to do, but the egret does benefit. So that's what it is, where one benefits and the other one is not harmed in the process. So that's commensalism. And then we're going on to number three, and it says living organisms such as plants are affected by abiotic factors which determine where they become established. Which of the following describes some of these determining factors, right? So you have A, parasitism, commensalism, mutualism, B, sunlight availability, soil pH, minerals, and then C, sediment size, shape, and color, and then D, deforestation, slash and burn, and shifting cultivation. So this question is asking about abiotic factors. So abiotic factors, we know that those are non-living things, right? So A could A could not be the answer because A is describing symbiotic relationships. That's one. B is the answer because it's actually talking about abiotic factors, which are non-living things such as sunlight availability, soil pH, minerals, and basically temperature. Those things, right? Those things are abiotic factors. So that's the different, and that's basically why B is the answer. The rest, we don't even really have to get into it. Sediment size, shape, color, it has nothing to do with the question really. And then deforestation slash and burn, shifting cultivation really have nothing to do with the question. If you know what abiotic factors are, then you would know immediately that these the answer: sunlight availability, soil pH, minerals. Okay, so now number four. Number four says a bacteria plays an important role in the cycling of nitrogen. Which of the following organisms is not a part of this cycle? So let's just say you don't remember the nitrogen cycle, you don't remember anything that goes on, but we know that obviously nitrogen in it. So what I would do, if let's just say you don't know anything, let's rule out A and let's rule out D, right? Let's rule out A and let's rule out D, and let's just say that those are, well, you have nitro. So basically, it has nitro at the beginning of the words. So you can say, okay, we're gonna include those two. So it's going to be down to Streptococcus and Rhizobium, right? But the answer here, which of the following organisms is not a part of the cycle? We have to rule out Streptococcus, because Streptococcus not really. It's Streptococcus is basically like bacteria, but it don't really have nothing to do with it in this situation, if you get what I mean. It don't really have much to do with it. So that's basically that. And then let's talk about number five. So number five says energy flows through ecosystems is not 100% efficient. This is so because what? So item 5 is referring to this diagram right here, and the answer is C. Loss. Energy is lost through respiration and excretion, right? So that's why energy flow through ecosystems is not 100% efficient, because when you look at it, it's like during an energy flow, so much energy is lost before it get passed on. So if you look at the diagram, you have the sun, the producers, the consumers, the decomposers, and it goes around. But basically, we have heat being lost right there from the producer. So basically, as energy gets moved on through the food chain or whatever, energy is lost. So then the person highest in the food chain, they get probably the least amount of energy, because starting out from the producer, energy is lost, then it passed on to like the primary consumer, secondary consumer, so a lot of energy is lost in the process, right? So that's what they mean when they say energy is lost through respiration and excretion, right? So that's what they mean. So let's talk about question 6 to 7. So let's talk about that. So it basically refers to the following food chain, which shows the feeding relationships in a freshwater habitat. So we have microscopic algae to mosquito larva, small fish, large fish. So that's basically a simple food chain. So the organism to which the least amount of energy is available is going to be the large fish. And it goes back to exactly what I was saying just now. It goes back to the same point I was trying to make, that during in a food chain, so much energy is lost, right? So much energy is lost. So if we start out with the producer, which is basically, it has to be able to photosynthesize. So it can either be a plant or it can be algae. As long as it is able to carry out photosynthesis, it works, right? So in this situation, the microscopic algae, same thing, it is the producer. So by the time that energy reaches to the large fish, it's not getting as much, right? Because it literally passed through mosquito larvae, it passed through the small fish, and energy is lost along the way, right? Energy is lost along the way. Right, so let's talk about number 7. So the greatest number of individuals in the food chain would be the microscopic algae, which is D. And the reason for that is because, alright, have you ever seen like a pyramid? And on the pyramid, you would see that the producers are the largest. And as you get to the top of the food chain or whatever, you realize that for example, like our apex predators or like our tertiary consumers, they are lesser, right? So usually we have a lot of consumers, and as you go up the pyramid or along the food chain, you do realize that um you do realize that the the numbers decrease, right? because what you can have is like an apex predator, right? At the top, meaning that they're at the top of the food chain, they can wipe out everything. What you realize is that you usually just have a few of them compared to like the producers and everything else. So that's basically the reason, right? So the greatest number of individuals in the food chain would be the microscopic algae. Number 8 says, which of the following effects of climate change pose the greatest threat to small islands, right? And the answer is going to be rising sea levels. And let's just say you did not know. Let's think about it. We live on an island, right? We live on an island, and we're really small, right? Compare like Jamaica, or compare somewhere like maybe Barbados. We're literally small islands, and let's compare it to like the US or Canada. Let's compare it. We don't stand a chance, because if sea levels should rise, okay, the US is big, Canada is big. Yes, they lose some land, but oh well, it's not a big deal. If sea levels rise, we can get washed off the map instantly, just like that, right? So that is why it's the greatest threat to small islands, because we can get washed off the map like that, and the more we lose land or land space, whatever you want to call it, it's not good, right? So that's why it's the biggest threat to small islands. So now we have number 9, and it says, so number 9 refers to the following graph of population growth. So phase 4 of the graph of population growth is most likely due to the competition from invasive species, right? So we can see that this is clearly phase 4, and basically what you can see happening here is that the population obviously rose, increased in numbers, and then it level off, and then at 4 it is dropping, right? Because there's competition, right? Obviously, for this population or the number of organisms to increase, there had to be favorable conditions, right? Obviously. And now it level off at that point where okay, they might live comfortable, this is their capacity, and then they realize that oh, we have competition between each other now, and that's why the population starts to decrease, number of organisms start to decrease. Then we have number 10. So which of the following statements about recycling manufactured materials are true? So 1, less energy is used in the manufacturing of new products by using the raw materials from recycled products. 2, all manufactured products can be recycled. And then 3, recycling of some non-biodegradable materials prevents landfill sites from filling up too quickly and for a long time. Right? So the answer is going to be 1 and 3. It's going to be 1 and 3. And the reason why it's 1 and 3, and that's basically B, is because not all manufactured products can necessarily be recycled. A lot probably can be recycled, but I wouldn't say everything. Because we're literally facing that issue right now with certain materials or certain things that they manufacture. At this moment, I cannot give a specific example as to what, but there are things. Just think around in your environment and think about some things that can't be recycled, right? So, yeah. Alright, so the answer for number 10 is going to be B. Then now we're moving on to number 11. Which of the following are effects of pollutants on coral reefs in the Caribbean? Which of the following are effects of pollutants on coral reefs in the Caribbean? So 1 says increasing algae, and seagrass growth, and then 2, less reef fish, and then 3, more branching corals. So the answer is going to be 1 and 2 only, so it's going to be A. So the more pollution we have in our coral reefs in the Caribbean, more macroalgae, and then more seagrass growth, and obviously less reef fish. And this is something that I personally can attest to, because I did a ecology course recently where we had to snorkel over the Discovery Bay coral reef in Jamaica, and let me tell you, there was a lot of seagrass. A lot of seagrass and barely any fish. Barely any fishes in the area that we went. So it was a lot of seagrass, very pale corals, and yeah. So less reef fish, and then increase in the macroalgae and seagrass because the algae take over and whatever. But basically, that's the answer A. So now number 12. Which of the following organelles in a cell is the site of aerobic respiration? Now, don't be fooled because them say aerobic respiration. Once you hear the word respiration, you know that it has to be mitochondria. So the answer is going to be D. It's the powerhouse, energy supplier, everything. So once they talk about energy, once they talk about respiration, know that it is the mitochondria. The number 13 says, which of the following is caused by a lack of vitamin A in the diet? And then the answer is going to be D, night blindness. If you know the box juice called Cool Kids, there's something on one of them where it's like, oh, full of vitamin A, prevents or decreases night blindness. If you ever like read the box, like the swizzle, like you know the local juice boxes that we have, especially in Jamaica, it literally says, oh, prevent night blindness or whatever the case may be. But yeah, vitamin A can lead to night blindness, right? So your vision goes bad. And number 14, the role of respiration is the a release of energy. That's basically what the role of respiration is, and we know that respiration is basically the opposite of photosynthesis. So now number 15. So number 15 says the chemical equation for photosynthesis shown below is incomplete. Which of the following combinations would accurately complete the equation? Now, everyone should know the formula for photosynthesis, and basically it is CO2 plus H2O equal with sunlight over chlorophyll, glucose, and then we're going to produce oxygen, right? So the end products of photosynthesis are going to be glucose, and it's also going to be oxygen, and then the inputs are basically water and carbon dioxide. So the answer for this is going to be A, 6CO2, and then 6O2, and basically the 6 before it is just balancing out the equation. If you do chemistry, you know about this. If you never do chemistry, then you don't know. But you put 6 before everything in order to balance it out with the glucose, C6H12O6. So that's why we have the 6 before them. Okay, so now we're at number 16, and it says reference to the following diagrams of different structures taken from plants and animals. Number 1 is clearly showing like epithelial cells, right? And you know that cells make up tissues, right? So number 16 is asking which of the above structures is not a tissue? We know that cells make up tissues. So cells make up tissues make up organs, and the organs make up systems. So what we're looking for is not a single cell, but we're looking for tissue. So we're looking for multiple cells, right? So we don't want one cell, we want multiple. So that can be an easy way to identify what is tissue here and what is not tissue. So if we look at one where we have the epithelial cells, so that's 1, 2, 3, so we can say, okay, epithelial tissue. Then right here we see a neuron all by itself. This is a nerve cell all by itself. Hint, hint. And then we're at 3, which this is basically in like a dicot leaf. So you're gonna have like the mesophyll and whatever's going on in here, right? Some of the stomata come down in there and all that stuff. So this is basically like in a dicot leaf, right? And then this should be like this is more like muscle thing right here. So basically, which of the above structures is not a tissue? Let's just say you never have no idea what 1, 2, or 3 or 4 be. What you can do is remember this: cells make up tissues, right? And the question is asking which of the above is not a tissue. So if you want to use a common sense and pick out the correct answer, what you can do is, okay, one has 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we know that we can call this a tissue because it's multiple cells here. B, this is only one cell all by itself, so big red flag here. And then here we see multiple stuff going on here. And then here we also see multiple stuff. We see more than one going on here. So if I had to pick which is not a tissue, I would pick 2, the neuron, because it's all by itself. It's all alone. There's nothing there. Good. Anyways, let's move on to 17 and 18. So we have this diagram here. We have the cucumber, concentrated salt solution, and we have water. So the process being investigated is a osmosis. How do we know that it is osmosis, right? Why wasn't it like translocation? Why wasn't it active transport, right? No, these are different processes, but the biggest indicator that could tell you that this is osmosis is the fact that there is water involved. And we know that osmosis is the movement of water molecules from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration across a semi-permeable membrane until it's evenly distributed. Just like if you do the potato strip test, same thing. Once water is involved, we're talking about osmosis. Diffusion more so happens in the air, so we can scrap diffusion completely. Translocation happens more in plants, so we think that it don't really relate to the question. Translocation right here, right? That's more like translocation is really dealing with like the phloem, right? And stuff. So we can scrap translocation too. Active transport, there's no energy or whatever going on here. And we know that active transport uses ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to basically against a concentration gradient from low to high, or actually, yeah, from low to high. That's how active transport works. So basically, we know that the answer is going to be A, osmosis, because the water label give away everything. So for we see salt and we see water and we see, just like if we have a potato, it's still osmosis. Here we have a cucumber, same thing, osmosis. So when you see like a question like this, don't be fooled because of the diagram, because this does not look like a cucumber. It does not. But let's move on. Number 18. Which diagram best illustrates the levels of the liquids if the apparatus is left undisturbed for 1 hour? So we're going to choose A for number 18. And then number 19 says, which of the following is not necessary for photosynthesis to take place? Remember earlier we said that oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. We said that, right? So the input for photosynthesis is going to be carbon dioxide and also water. And then we know sunlight over chlorophyll, which is in the plant, and then the end product is going to give us glucose and oxygen, right? So oxygen is not necessary for photosynthesis to take place. It is what is going to be produced at the end after photosynthesis takes place. Alright, now we're at number 20. So a greenhouse plant, which is usually kept at a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, is subjected to a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius for 24 hours, right? So the most likely effect of this change is that the plant would close the stomata and reduce water loss, right? So let's read the question one more time. It says a plant that is usually kept at 25 is now at 30, right? So we know that it's at a temperature that is hotter than usual, right? Imagine if you were the plant and you realize, oh, me I lose way too much water. This temperature is not for me. It's just imagine like a human being, a person outside, and it's hot. Let's just say you come from maybe a cold country, and like you come to Jamaica or something, and you just start sweating, right? So you have to do everything in your power to conserve the water, because you go drop down, you go have a heat stroke or whatever. But it's the same thing with a plant. If a plant is subjected to a temperature that is higher than what it's used to, the immediate reflex mechanism is to close the stomata to try to reduce the water loss. Then now we're at items 21 and 22, and we're talking about this incisor tooth. So the region of the tooth sensitive to the temperature is labeled 3. So basically right here, that's it. So 3, that is the region of the tooth sensitive to the temperature, right? So the answer would be C, and the answer would be 3. Just ignore that M. Who knows why that M is there? Anyways, then it says the region labeled 4 is which is basically right here, is the cement. Then we're moving on to number 23. So it says the diet of a bodybuilder should contain large amounts of proteins, right? Because we know that proteins builds and repairs, right? Like upon reading this question, there should be no hesitation to pick protein. A bodybuilder don't need more fat, right? They don't need more vitamins. We already have that. It's a micronutrient. We already have carbohydrates, right? We give it energy. We need more protein. You ever see like movies or Instagram, social media, people basically kind of like drinking protein shakes and stuff like that is to build their muscles. So that's why. So protein would be the answer to 23. Then it says, which of the following is the best definition for excretion? Right? So let's go through the options here. So A says loss of excess materials. B, loss of indigestible materials. C, removal of metabolic wastes. And then D, removal of unwanted substances. So basically, this question said which of the following is the best definition for excretion, and that means that there are other options on this list that kind of make sense and could even you could write it, but it's not precise. But basically, they're asking for the precise definition for excretion. If we want the precise definition for excretion, we would pick C, which is basically the removal of metabolic wastes, right? Because it's waste. That's the whole point of excretion, to remove waste from our bodies, basically waste from different metabolic processes that were going on in our bodies. That is how we get rid of waste. Then now we're at number 25. Which of the following enzymes works best in an acid pH? We're going to choose A, pepsin. And number 26, carbon monoxide in cigarettes most likely causes C, a decrease in oxygen transported by the blood. And then number 27, in the transport of solutes in the phloem, the source is defined as any area of the plant where sucrose is loaded into the phloem, right? Sucrose is loaded into the phloem. And this kind of reminds me of like the phloem theory or the translocation theory, whatever you call it. But basically, the source and the sink, the source is a part of the plant where the sugars are loaded into the phloem, and the source is usually the leaf, and the sink is usually the root, right? So it's loaded into the phloem, right there, and then obviously with some help from the xylem and some water and stuff, we get the sucrose moving and we get it transported within the plant, right? Okay, so now we're at number 28, and basically at number 28 it says, which of the following parts of the human skeleton contributes the least to its protective function, right? So we have A, rib, B, cranium, C, humerus, and then D, pelvic girdle. So the answer is C, humerus. So it says the one that contributes least to its protective function, because obviously the rib protect the lungs, heart, everything inside, cranium and protect the brain, right? And then pelvic girdle protecting all of our reproductive organs, and then the humerus just in the foot like that. So it has the least protective function. So now number 29. So which of the following labeled parts represents the ligament? And the answer is number 4, so D. Then number 30 says, which of the following are involved in the formation of blood clots? So the answer is A, platelets. And then number 31 says large organisms cannot depend solely on diffusion for the uptake and transport of gases. This is because as organisms get larger, the surface area to volume ratio decreases, which is B. And basically, think about it. For example, something as small as like a cockroach, the surface area to volume ratio, it kind of more for workout. But imagine a big human being, or like frogs, because some frogs can carry out, well, not some, all frogs can carry out cutaneous respiration, right? And basically that means that they can breathe through their so they can respire through their skin, right? Imagine human beings, right? It would not work out because our skin, one, we cannot respire through our skin. It's a protective coating. That's the function our skin serves as a protective coating. It's not to respire. It's not to diffuse gases because we do not diffuse oxygen through our skin. We have to take it in through our nose and through our mouth, right? In order for it to get into our lungs, right? So that is why this really doesn't make sense. Large organisms cannot rely on diffusion. It won't work out because listen, the skin is a protective. That's like a protective barrier. That's the main function. We cannot respire through our skin. We cannot just take in oxygen through our skin because if imagine if all human beings is just wait for oxygen to diffuse through the skin. We dead long time before that happened. Anyways, so basically this is because as organisms get larger, the surface area to volume ratio decrease, right? So it decreases for a small, like maybe an ant, it works out because the surface area to the volume that we're trying to transport, whatever gas or whatever we're trying to diffuse, it works out because the surface area to volume ratio is small, right? So it is efficient. Now, when a big human being like us, it will work out. So as the organism get bigger, the surface area to volume ratio does decrease. All right, now number 32. So refers to the following actions. Number one, withdrawal of an earthworm into its burrow when touched. 2. Bending of shoots towards light. 3. Rolling up of a millipede when touched with a needle. 4. Movement of maggots away from light. All of these actions are examples of responses, right? Because all of them literally had a stimulus, right? And we know that there has to be a stimulus for there to be like a response made, right? So that's what happened. So obviously the earthworm was touched, that's why it moved. Shoots, they move towards light. There's a stimulus that caused it to move, right? The millipede, touch with a needle, it's all stimulus. And then you have movement of maggots away from light, it's all a stimulus. It's all caused by a stimulus, right? So all of these are responses. So you might be tricked and say, oh, A is the answer, A is not the answer, B is the answer, because these are all responses to the stimulus. Anyways, right, number 33. So it refers to the following events that occur when a student reacts to touching a hot object by withdrawing her hand. So we have hot object, pain, effector, response. So the receptor is the sensory endings in the skin, right? That's what the receptor does. So our receptors are sensory organs that bring the message into the body, bring the impulse into the body to say, hey, this is happening. Because imagine we touch the hot object, oh, we start feel pain, and then the effector neuron are going to cause the response to be made, right? So it's all a process. So the receptor is going to be the sensory endings in the skin that bring it into the body so that we can know, oh, we touch a hot object. Because if we did not have these receptors, we probably wouldn't be able, we probably just touch the hot part on our skin, just a burn off, and we don't even feel one thing. That is why it's important that we have receptors. And then number 34 says, fats are good food reserves because they have a high energy value. So the answer would be B. So fats and carbohydrates kind of do the same job, and we kind of store like fats in our bodies. So let's just say if you start starve or whatever, your body are gonna start to use that fat because it can provide high energy value. Alright, so I think this is the last one, right? Okay, so number 35. So in a patient with a certain defective heart condition, it was found that blood flowed from point 1 to point 2 in the diagram above. This was most likely due to the malfunction of the bicu bicuspid mitral valve. By pronunciation, I'm always bad, but basically, yeah, bicuspid valve or mitral. Let's just call it mitral valve, right? And we know that So we're saying that there's a malfunction of it, right? So usually when we have valves in the heart, they are to, prevent the backflow of blood. We don't want blood backflowing and stuff like that. So there would be a malfunction in that. Number 36 says, which of the following comparisons between arteries and veins is not correct, right? So just looking at it, I can tell that A is completely wrong because veins have valves and arteries don't have valves. So this A is saying that arteries have valves. So A is saying valves present in arteries and then valves absent in veins. That's not true. Only veins have valves, right? And valves are to prevent the backflow of blood in the heart. Right, so anyways, we know the what is not correct. A is not correct completely. We're not even have to really look any further. A is not correct. Number 37 says glaucoma is a result of D, too much fluid in front of the lens. And then number 38 says, which of the following is true about how the muscles of the iris respond to dim light? So, which of the following is true about how the muscles of the iris respond to dim light? So the answer is going to be C. So circular muscle relaxes and then radial muscle contracts. Number 39. Which of the following is a spinal reflex? Spinal reflex, right? And the answer is going to be D, the knee jerk reflex. Number 40 says, which of the following is not a distinguishing feature of the nervous system? And so basically, which of the following is not a distinguishing feature of the nervous system? So basically, this question is asking what feature here the nervous system does not have. So rapid response completely out because we know that the nervous system works fast, speed of light, or faster than speed of light. Localized reaction, we know that's true also, and then temporary response because when a neuron fires, it don't just stay in your body like stay in your body permanent. It's very temporary. It's just so when the receptor comes in and celebrate your we call it the neurons come in, your sensory neurons come in, and then spinal cord, central nervous system, brain come back down. You get the motor neurons in order to make a response. That's a very fast process, right? So it's not a long-lasting effect. It's very much temporary. So that we know that D is correct, and we know that C is not a distinguishing feature of the nervous system because the nervous system does not have a long-lasting effect. It's very fast, neuron fire, and bam, 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 action potential. Everything happens very fast, and it's very much temporary. So if you touch a hot pot right now and your nervous system say move your hand, it done right there. So it literally done. It's not like you're gonna just keep on a move your hand uncontrollably. So it don't have a long lasting effect. It's very much temporary. Then number 41 says item 41 is based on the following graph which shows the height of some students in a class. So number of students height. Which labeled portion of the graph represents the unusually short students, right? So for this, we are going to choose A as the answer, as unusually short, right? So, yeah, so that's basically the height. We see that A is short, then it kind of rise up B, C, and it kind of come back down in a D. But the unusually short set starts off at A, so we're going to choose A as the answer. Anyways, this is just a quick so basically in this we only did 41 questions, which not everything, but we did more than half, so that's still good. But anyways, I hope this helped. It's just going through the January 2017 CSET biology paper. I hope that it definitely helped a lot. Yeah, so that's basically how it is. We answered 41 questions and I hope it helped, and I hope that you have a good exam. Do more past papers, practice,